Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Method in Madness. This is episode number 41. Today, we are going to talk about poetry and the impact of poetry in a growing mind. Poems, when introduced to children, are introduced in a way which is rather rote, especially when we are planning or preparing for an elocution competition. All we do is memorize the poems and we perform them. But poetry and the impact of poetry is much larger in a child's life and the life of an adult when the child grows up into an adult. To talk about that and more about life, poetry, and the joy of living, we have with us Kalaramesh. Kalaramesh is a haiku poet, editor, and mentor. Kalaramesh writes and teaches haiku, tanka, haibun, and renku to children, undergrads, and senior citizens. An external faculty member of the Symbiosis International University, Pune, since 2012, she teaches Japanese short forms of poetry to undergrads, a first in her country. Passionate about taking haiku to everyday spaces, Kala initiated the Haiku Wall India project, which has graffiti artists paint haiku on city walls. I was also really, really happy and full of gratitude to work with Kalaramesh. I got this opportunity to perform on Kalaramesh's poems, her haiku, and not only on stage, but also for a film. And today, with great pleasure, I invite Kala. Kala.
Oh, thank you so much. And Vaishali, what an introduction. Much more than what I have done in life. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure working with you. And hello, everyone. I'm here to talk about haiku because I think that's the only thing I know. And haiku is about life. So that means everything is inclusive. Yeah.
Thank you, Kala, for joining us. Yes, so just to let everybody know that Kala and we are going to talk for the next 45 minutes, 45 to 50 minutes. Please keep, joining us in the conversation through the comment box, the chat box, and we will take some of your questions towards the end of the show. But do keep commenting, do keep participating in our conversation through the chat box. So, Kala, let's begin.
Yes, I'm all ready.
Yeah. So we'll come to haiku a little later. But let me tell you something about what I observed the day I met you for the first time. What I saw was this bubbly character, this butterfly in a woman's body. And I felt that, oh my God, this is what poetry can do to a person's being and well-being. So tell us a little bit about poetry and how poetry impacts or has impacted your life.
Oh, well, I must just give all the credit to my parents because they were steeped in arts, in all types of arts. So I was not into writing at all. I was more into music. And then my sisters were into dancing and music, vocal music, and I was on Veena. And it so happened very late. I kept trying and I went into Kumar Gandharva's Gaiki. I learned for 19 years and gave concerts. And somewhere it had to happen. Serendipity, you can say, you can call it what you want. Haiku came into my life. And it was my brother, when we were talking about Vedanta, Indian philosophy and Advaitic philosophy, he spoke about a type of poetry which is akin to oneness. And that was, I was very curious. And then I asked him, he showed me little one or two Basho's poems and said it is called a haiku. And it is situated in this moment. And that sort of fascinated me because in music, when I sing, I'm in this moment. and then the voice fades, but I'm again singing. I'm in this moment, and that, I think, being in that moment, and that moment fading, and the next moment coming in gradually, and then this is what haiku is, and I think that is what clicked me, because I wanted to be a musician. I never wanted to be a poet or teach poetry, but yes, life leads us all twists and turns, and we take it, and we are happy about it. And I'm very happy to be here talking about haiku. Yes. And for Vaishali to have invited me, I'm thrilled.
Kala, haiku is a form of poetry. But if we look at poetry as a whole, what impact do you think it leaves on a child's mind? We'll come to adulthood a little later, but when a child is given or gifted a poem, what does it do to a child?
See, even before the child is gifted a poem, which means you're talking about a child who can read. Okay, I'm talking about a newborn baby. When
Hmm.
they babble, when they talk, it's poetry. When they're listening to the mother's lips, the grandmother's lips, they're seeing their pets run, they're seeing the branches, because I have my granddaughter and my grandson. When they see the branches sway and when they see a flower close by, that is poetry. That is poetry happening in their minds already. And then it grows into what can I say? Maybe a stylized form of poetry which we expose them to when they grow older. And even without that exposure, poetry is going to continue. Their walking is poetry. Poetry has rhythm, it has rhyme, it has rhythm, it has beauty, it has what to say, movement. And life is about movement. So poetry is happening. I remember when I was into music, I asked my tabalji, which comes first? Raga comes first or rhythm comes first?
Hmm.
He said, rhythm. I said, come on, Azad. How can it be rhythm? I think music comes first. He said, no, the rhythm is there in the child's womb, in the mother's womb, and the child is hearing the dug, dug, dug.
Hmm.
The rhythm is set into the child's psyche, and in the whole thing, the child knows the rhythm first, and then when they come out they hear the music. So rhythm is there. So if rhythm and music is there, that is poetry. That is poetry. That is nothing else. And poetry is happening, I think, from the time the child is in the womb.
Yes.
I don't know whether I've answered your question, but this is what I felt answering.
No, I mean, we can talk about it. It's not like a question answer thing, but I
Yes.
always wonder that in school when we were growing up, it is very important to have been exposed to a form like poetry, a form of literature like poetry um, in a very conditioned way, or maybe in a very careful way. What do you have to say about that? There are lots of teachers who are watching us today. What are your thoughts about
Yes.
how to introduce poetry to a child in school?
Uh, I first, Katha asked me to take a course for Sarvodaya schools, which is a Hindi medium school, and I'm not fluent in Hindi. But I said yes because I'm going to teach haiku, and haiku I know well. So when I
Hmm.
went over there, um, how do you teach a 10-year-old and 11-year-old poetry?
Hmm.
What the teachers have been doing and what I have been doing as a school person, I did
Hmm.
senior Cambridge, was the teacher would expose the poem or read the poem, and we'll analyze the poem, and then we'll write about the poem. When have they ever asked us to write a poem immediately? Maybe as an assignment or summer vacation, a poem would be asked to write. But we are
Yes.
studying someone else's poem. We are studying someone else constantly. The minute I go to the 11th standard, 10-year-olds and was fifth A and fifth B I had waiting. Fifth A, 50 eyes, eager eyes looking at me. And the teachers just go out because they think it is their free period. Okay, it is. So we outside. And here I was, didn't know how I'm going to tackle haiku, which is 400 years old art form. And tell me one Japanese art form, whether it's karate or ikebana or bonsai, you name it, where you can teach something in half an hour and the child will say, I understand. Why? Take our classical music. Can you go to Lata Mangeshkar, light classical, film music? Can you go to Lata Mangeshkar or any other person and say, in half an hour, teach me how to sing a film song? Impossible. It is years and years. Can we go to Jasraj or can you go to M.S. Subbalakshmi and say, in half an hour, teach me how to sing a raga? No, it's not possible. Same way, haiku is 400-year-old art form. It's not possible. But what is possible is trying to get the movement moving in the child's mind. You talk about a leaf and you talk about the leaf flipping, dancing, waltzing, and coming onto the grass. You can take the child's attention there and say, can you write about it? And that is where haiku has a plus point. When I teach haiku, simultaneously I'm asking the child to write. My undergrads in Simbi are simultaneously writing. They've already written. They've been writing for the course started on 7th of this January, but it is just 20 days and they've been writing and writing poetry, which they wouldn't have thought they'll be doing. Mostly, you're studying the history of the poetry. When I first went to my music teacher, he said, I was 7 years old. He told my mother, I'm a professional performer. I will teach her how to perform on stage, and I will not teach her how to pass exams in music, which is two entirely different things.
Yes.
Okay, and in poetry, I might be wrong. I'm not condemning anybody or criticizing anybody, but in poetry, what is happening in schools, we are exposing them to the theory part. Again and again, we are going back to the masters and saying, listen to them, listen, analyze them. Questions are banked on those questions, on their poems, on William Wordsworth and Shakespeare. And where is you study it, then you say you write something, don't imitate, write your own. Study the next poem, write your own. I think we are getting the poetry out of shackles. We are getting it out of the oyster. We are getting it where the child was in the womb, just listening to the beat
Yeah.
without any interference, without any interference from an adult. And I think that is what is essential, very essential.
I
And that is
remember,
what
Kala.
my teaching, because I
Yes.
feel, because I didn't come as a teacher, I came as a musician.
Hmm.
And I came
Hmm.
from a musician where I was taught how to perform.
Hmm.
I didn't give a written exam. So I took the same approach to haiku. I don't know how others teach haiku, but for
Hmm.
me, it is reading, writing, reading, writing. More you read, more you write. And it
But
goes simultaneously.
okay.
Yes.
But would you recommend haiku to be the first form of poetry that should be introduced to children? And which age is the right age to introduce haiku?
See, at 6 and 7, I think we are too young because we cannot ignore what to say, the nuances and the conventions and the way, the stylized form of haiku. The minute we ignore that and we just say write anything, it's going to be free verse.
Hmm.
And that is
Hmm.
not haiku. If it's
Yeah.
going to be haiku, I feel the best age is 12, 13, 14, 15. They start blooming because they've already know what is abstract words. They know what is show, don't tell. They know these underlying principles of writing. The teachers have done all this preliminary writing and giving essays to them. And then when I
Hmm.
say just 8 words, 9 words, can't you write one poem every day? I say,
Hmm.
you write compositions of 200 words, 400 words. Can't you write an 8 word poem? And then they say, yes, miss, we'll write, we'll write. And then they start attempting. And I say, keep on writing one. By the end of the month, you're having 30 poems. Out of that, one or two would be beautiful. Like
Hmm.
Basho has said, you write 100 haiku and one would be a masterpiece. It is there
Yeah.
with everybody, in there with every art. I keep on practicing. 1,000 hours I practice, but what I perform on stage is something totally different. It might come out well, it might not come out well. And that is the beauty of performing arts. That
Yes,
is the
it is.
beauty. And if you consider poetry as an art form, it should have all the ingredients of an art form.
Hmm.
We cannot make it stylized and make it bookish.
True.
If that is there, then the
Hmm.
child starts blooming and the every time in Simbi, many children come and say, we didn't go near poetry because it was just too much beyond us. And I'd start
Yes.
the class, the first class, I tell them, this is not poetry. Haiku is not poetry. It is life. It is nature. It is observing human nature. If you can do that, you can write haiku. It is not poetry. It doesn't have rhyme. We don't rhyme because if you take a tree, one branch goes like this, another branch goes like this, one branch goes like this, and the other one goes straight. Where is symmetry there? Where is rhymes there?
Mm.
So haiku is a natural type of poetry. It does not have rhyme, but it has internal rhythm.
Rhythm.
Isn't that
Yes,
beautiful? The
it
internal
is.
rhythm is a heartbeat. The internal
True.
rhythm, and that it has so much of internal rhythm, and and of course I'm all haiku, 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 haiku. I sleep haiku, I think haiku, I dream haiku, I eat haiku. So if you ask me, I would say yes, a child must be exposed to haiku because then they
Mm.
start appreciating nature, they start appreciating human nature, they start appreciating the now, the present, because we
Mm.
don't write about the past, we don't write about the future, we write about now. How beautiful it is to write about now. Let me tell you, falling apple, a branch sweeps into a new balance. It's by Max Werhart. He just died. Scandinavian. He just 2 years back. It won an award. Falling apple. Any child, 6-year-old, will know falling apple.
Mm.
But branch sweeps into a new balance. The branch that was carrying the apple was heavy, and the weight drops, and then there is a slight movement, and then it reaches its balance. When I tell
Mm.
this, even an 8-year-old child, I say, what is it? They say horizontal. Yes, ma'am. That I said that is a horizontal. Can you draw it? Yes, we can draw it. Yes, what can
Mm.
you draw? You can draw the falling apple, and you can see the in cartoons they draw lines to show movement. We can show the movement of the branch, and we can show the movement. I said, does it tell you something else? And one 8-year-old child says, when my dog died,
Mm.
it was like the falling apple. I was holding him and I was with him for 3.5 years. Just 3.5 years, he passed away because of some poison. We didn't expect that death to happen. Okay.
Mm.
Just recently it happened. He said it just dropped from my life. And then I was completely down. And my mother said, bounce back, come back, go back to your sports, go back to your play, go back to your studies. We can get another dog, but I'm going to think about the other dog now. Let us now digest that they choose no more. Okay,
Mm.
and that is the falling apple. The branch sweeps into a new balance. If an 8-year-old can understand the significance of this poetry, it is life. I keep telling haiku is life. And then that is going to help them. We don't preach, we don't talk about God, we don't solemnize, we don't talk about the Atman and the Paramatma and Mukti and salvation. Nothing.
Mm.
Just words that a
Now.
6-year-old will understand, situated in now. And then it grows and grows and grows in the mind of the child. Then when he fails in, or when she fails in the maths test, it's a sweeping branch that sweeps into a new balance. When she, in case she loses her grandmother, getting that balance back into life. So
Mm.
this is haiku. This is something that I think it will benefit not just children, not just teenagers, not just young adults. I think it benefits everyone. And the beauty is we can write it.
Yes, we can write it. In fact, when I did the workshop with you, not a workshop, it was just an appreciation class that we had done, if you remember, Kala. It
Am
was,
I on?
yes, you are. Yes, we can hear you, but your video is paused, but don't worry. So, just to let everybody know, this is a conversation with Kalaramesh, haiku poet and mentor. So I was just telling Kala that when I did this appreciation course with you, Kala, it was a very short program. Uh, but just by doing that program, I felt that I could, be in the present moment and observe things around me which were happening then and there.
Yes,
And I think somewhere drama and theater and music and dance, all of these art forms help you
yes,
be in the present. And
absolutely.
yeah, so that gave me, because I was an adult then, but that still gave me a lot of new insight into my own surrounding, which was amazing. But let me get back to this thing of art. You asked your children to draw, right?
Yes.
Um, so drawing, art, and poetry. I would like to, talk a little bit about that. For you to talk a little bit about that. How um, does art translate into poetry, or poetry translate into art? And is art a tool that teachers and parents can use to introduce poetry, or help children appreciate the art form?
See, not just art. I think it's any art form rubs off on the other. It makes the foundation, it makes the fundamental, the what to say, the depth of knowledge that you have grow, become stronger in you. The roots, actually, the roots are goes deeper when you interact one art form with the other. So I always encourage. I think I am this effective as a haiku poet because of the years and years I practiced in vocal music in
Hmm.
both Carnatic as well as Hindustani. See,
Hmm.
when Kumar Gandharva spoke about silences, and he couldn't. I don't know whether you know, it's not relevant
Yes,
here, but I'm just quickly telling you that
please.
he had, at 23, when he was doing so well, at the age of 13 or 14, he got the title of Kumar Gandharva. Gandharva is Savai Gandharva. All these things, Maharashtrians are very fond of giving title to Savai Gandharva. Gandharva. So he was called
Hmm.
Kumar Gandharva. But, and then his father put him under Professor Devdar at Bombay, who was not a strict disciplinarian as following the Gharana. He said,
Hmm.
listen to everybody, let your mind grow. Okay? In that type of eclectic atmosphere, Kumarji grew at the age of 23. He fell sick, very seriously
Hmm.
ill. And
Hmm.
then, and that time, they were, I'm talking about, if he had been alive, he'll be 90 years now. So you're
Hmm.
talking about some 80 years or 75 years back when people didn't know what TB was. People didn't know
Hmm.
what cancer was. Now the story is maybe it was cancer that he suffered, maybe it was TB. But what they said was, your 1.5 lung is
Hmm.
completely gone. We have to remove it immediately if you have to live. So they removed 1.5 lung and they just kept half a lung. Can you imagine? And they said for 5 years, you cannot open your mouth if you want to sing. You can't even hum, you can't even talk. He used to write everything. And they said you can't be in Bombay. It's the humidity is too much. You have to go into a dry place and he used Devas. He went to Devas and settled down there. And there he had a
Hmm.
Nair cook. He's been there from Bombay. He continued. One day, Nair went near Kumarji and he said, Kumarji, you're humming. Why are you doing this? Don't you want to sing again? So
Hmm.
Kumarji said, quite. He used to write everything. The next day, he clapped for Nair and Nair came running. He said, what is it? He said, look, he pointed and there was a sparrow and he wrote, if the sparrow with such a tiny lung can sing, can't I sing with such a huge lung?
Hmm.
And 5 years later, he shocked the music world by coming back with such vigor and such force and such vitality in that half a lung. And here we are having two lungs. Here we are having how many people are not having full faculty in their minds. Here the children are having these things. The special children also can do. This is
Hmm.
haiku is something that is so simple. You don't need vocabulary. You don't need poetics. You don't need anything. All you need is simple. Falling apple, a branch sweeps into a new balance. What is there? Nothing big in it. Like my own poem, Morning Raga, a honeybee attempts to waken the bud. It's nothing.
Yes.
It's a simple, no big words involved. So I think, I don't even know what the question you asked, Vaishali. I'm sorry, but I've been rambling and rambling and rambling.
I will take this opportunity, Kala, to ask all our viewers who are watching us and listening to us to share their favorite poet, if they have any. And maybe you could also give us a name of a poem that has really impacted your life, because there has been a poem which has impacted my life. It was actually when I was teaching this to one of my students, and the poem was "If" by Rudyard Kipling, many years ago. So
It's a lovely poem.
it's a lovely poem, but for a young, young adult, I was a young adult then, to read that poem. And when I worked with that poem with another person who was my student, and not a very young student, maybe a couple of years younger to me, um, it gave me a different kind of an understanding when I was discussing about the poem with my student. Would you Okay, how would you recommend? Would you recommend poetry clubs, like small poetry clubs or poetry societies that teachers and students can come up with?
See,
You know,
of course, we are
yeah.
running one. I'm running one in Facebook. It's called Triveni. What do we do there? We post our poems and we critique it. We give our comments to it. And it
Hmm.
says, once the poem leaves my hands, I don't own it, because people have understood it and they are giving their own interpretations. If you take Kalidasa, you take Shakespeare, you take anybody, the amount of interpretations, the volumes that have come, we study the interpretation. We say, oh, it can be interpreted like this, oh, it can be done like this. And sometimes, because our haiku world is a very close-knit world, when we write a poem, the poet, the reader knows us. They send a mail and this is my interpretation. Is this anywhere close to yours? I said, no, it's a new interpretation. This is not the way I viewed it. So,
Yeah.
and this is the beauty of any artwork. Any artwork, I think it has to have multiple interpretations. The more interpretations that people are able to see it from different angles, it gives a much more faceted, a fuller perspective of that poem. The poem
Hmm.
grows in you, and that is important.
It
I think
does,
that's
and the
important.
poem,
And the
yeah, and the
club makes
poem.
a big view. Clubs do a big way. Yes,
Yes,
they make
I
you
remember.
comment. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, people have started commenting. So Nupur is saying that this is the poem "Stopping by a Wood" by Robert Frost, I think.
Oh, that's a lovely poem. Yes.
Yes, and "Where the Mind is Without Fear" by Tagore. Yes, definitely. I mean,
Yes.
this is a poem that, and I think this is a poem, Kala, "Where the Mind is Without Fear," that grows on you. And I've been reading it. I read it when I was 10. I read it again when I was 17 or 18. Then I again read it when I was 25, 26. And now when I read it, the meaning and the interpretation changes with time. And every time,
Yes,
the interpretation is valid, and it is
it
like
does.
your own interpretation.
It does. The understanding keeps on changing,
Hmm.
and it's all the more correct that it does. Like last time when I had Jaipur Lit Fest had launched my book, and when I'd gone over there, two people, I've forgotten their name, but they spoke about the adult understanding of Sita.
Hmm.
And I heard that, and I was blown. I said, I never saw Sita this way.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think I think we need to have these discussions. We need to have clubs. We need to discuss and get away to our private world to write your own poems.
Yes.
All this should go with writing your poems. No, this is not just this talking, talking, talking. Then it becomes meaningless talk. It has to come
Yes.
with poetry, your writing, and that is important. And clubs, I think, is a very good idea because you write your poem, then you discuss it, then you discuss someone else's poem and you discuss it. You read someone else's poem, you discuss. So what happens is your mind is coming through all the influences. It is like
Hmm.
any art form, any art form. If you take poetry as an art form and not as something that you have to study as part of the book, also see that in a English textbook, if you do 7 or 8 or 10 or 12 poems and then you do so many other essays, the poetry is very less. So that importance is given. I remember one CBSE child telling me, I don't know how far it is true, but the CBSE child said, ma'am, when they come to the Katha Creative Writers School workshop, there the
Workshop.
child said, the child said, when we come to haiku, we have haiku in CBSE. That will be the last chapters. When we come to the last chapters, they said, you can just leave this out. You'll be having a choice. You can leave that out and choose the other poems, other questions to answer. If that is going to be the attitude, only because it is difficult to understand. I'm not saying it's easy. Haiku is very simple to understand, very simple, and there lies the complexity. So if children are able to understand, go into that now and understand why that person has written something like this. And then there's a lot of theory behind it to help us. Like we say in haiku, the semicircle of a haiku, we don't finish it. We leave it unfinished for the poet, for the reader to enter. Then we say when you show the moon, when you show the moon with a bejeweled hand, all I see are your jewels. So haiku is the opposite. You show the moon with a bare hand. The hand doesn't interest me, and all I see is the moon. So there are so many coins, there are so many, quotes, and so many things that have come into to help us. Then we say haiku is a wordless poem. If you see, the words are so simple, it drops off. And what hits you is the image. And that's what you do in drama. That's what you do in painting. That's what you do in dance. And that is why these all come to so close together with haiku. Haiku is not descriptive. It is there. And you can dance it. Like Vaishali, you have done the poem so beautifully in your action. You can do it only because
Yes.
as I'm not telling anything. Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting lots of comments over here. K.T. Ravindran is saying Basho has changed the way he thinks, probably, because that's what we had asked, that which poet has impacted you. So Ravindran is saying Basho. So thank you.
Basho has impacted you. Very good. It has impacted. We call him Master Basho.
Yeah,
Yes.
Master Basho. What are the different areas of impact that you see? One, definitely there is an emotional impact. There is a psychological impact. But is there any tangible impact that you've seen?
Yes.
If
Respect
you
for
can.
Mother Earth. Respect for Mother Earth. And that is why I think haiku all the more gets the importance now. And now when we are having, especially with COVID, when we are stuck indoors, when we are stuck before the comp and online classes and assignments and everything, I told my Simbi students, I gave them 3 hours to go out into the open. I said, choose your colony park or go outside. If you're near the forest, go inside. And one child said, I'm in Bombay near the RA and I went to the RA forest. I've never gone there, ma'am. She said, I'm now 18 years. I've never gone there. I've only passed it on my way to school and I've seen the dense forest over there. She said, today I went there. My mother dropped me at the gate and I walked into. She said it was so peaceful. So I think we are getting away from nature. And I think haiku, like when I take them on a ginkgo walk is a nature walk. When I take them on a ginkgo walk for my Simbi students, I say we are all nature lovers. So after the walk, when we come down, we are going to pick up all the plastic covers and all the things and then bringing it down. So others should be doing it and we'll do it for them because we realize that we cannot do this to Mother Earth. And I think it's part and parcel of haiku because it's seasons poetry. Haiku is seasons poetry, which is nature poetry. Then Senryu is human nature. Then Haibun is prose embedded with haiku. Then Renku is collaborative poetry. Then Haiga is artwork with haiku. It's all related, all closely related. But the main focus is we respect Mother Earth. And I think that India had it lots. In those
Mm,
days, when the rishis went off to the ashram and people went to learn the Vedas, they were living in the ashram, walking barefoot in the forest, being with the trees. They knew what it is. And even the villagers, even my father was a villager when before after studying he came to Madras.
mm,
They were growing fields. They were growing rice, paddy
mm,
rice. So when you're doing all this, when you're with nature, you know the seasons are changing. From my maid in Pune, she'll tell me when it's raining, she'll say, oh, in Satara it's going to pour and our groundnut fields are going to go for a toss. I won't
mm.
even be thinking of all this because I don't know. Imagine if you become one with nature, how kind you'll be to nature, how much you'll respect nature. And that isn't that important for us? The amount of mistreatment, the amount of ill treatment that we give our nature, the amount of water we waste, the amount of electricity we waste, the amount of things we do to harm nature. If we all respected her, I think we'll be a better place and we'll be better haiku poets too.
Absolutely. We'll listen to some of your haiku at the end, Kala. So,
I don't know if I just remember, I don't know. See, I've written so many, but I can maybe read few. Yeah, yeah,
yeah. But before that,
yeah,
there are lots of parents who are watching us also. Uh,
yes,
Borrowing from haiku and maybe the Japanese tradition, because you have been, involved with writing haiku and Japanese culture as such at large. What uh,
yes.
what do you think parents can take away from this culture and this form of haiku?
So
What?
much.
Yeah.
So much. See, there was a time when we gave a lot of importance to space. If you see
Hmm.
the old temples, you see the old forts, the amount of space we had. Then we came into the cities and we became cramped, and we don't even think twice before throwing the teacup down on the floor on the road and walking past. Okay, we were not like this in the city. It was in the village. We
In the
kept our
village.
villages clean. The floors, the walls would be mopped, and the floors would be mopped. They'll take care. So why somewhere we have lost all that? Because we are in the city. We think the corporation is going to do it. And we say we are paying taxes. Why is the corporation doing it? But what about us? Are we keeping our roads clean? Are we doing something for the roads? So I think the takeaway would be when you're doing haiku would be the sensitivity.
Hmm.
To be sensitive, to get. Basho said a beautiful thing, which we keep quoting. He says, when you write about the pine, become the pine. When
Hmm.
you write about the pine, become the pine. Now, isn't that beautiful? When I write about the mountain, if I can think like the mountain, when I write about the trees, if I can think like the trees, if I write about my grandmother, if I can become a grandmother and see it from her angle, won't I be much more compassionate? Won't I
Yes.
be much more kinder to those things? We are not distant. We have become part of that. And I think that is your takeaway from haiku. Haiku makes you come closer to things, makes you become that. Like I always give in my classes, I put a beautiful Bansuri piece, and then I tell the students after 5 minutes, just 5 minutes, and then I tell them what it's a meditation music by Bapu Padmanabha, which I use extensively. Okay, it is the river tripping, and then the flute sound, the bird calls, and then his raga playing, and everything. They talk about when I tell the students what have you heard, they say some type of instrument was there. Then they say some type of the bird calls were there, ma'am. It was like morning scene. It was like walking into the forest. The water was trickling, and then we heard it was very serene. It was gave so much thing, but nobody talks about the flute. The minute they come to the sound of flute, I say you're warm. Anything
Hmm.
more? And then they say, I say warm. Come fast. Come closer to the flute. What is it? And then ultimately, maybe they'll say the flute player was also there. And I
Hmm.
say, the flute player, by just playing on the flute, he's blowing. He's blowing, but what you hear is a sound, is a note, is a swara. If he can transform his blowing into a swara, when you write about the pine, become the pine. I say, can't you do that? If a musician can do that, when Vaishali dances, she becomes that character, she becomes that movement. If she can do it, can't you do it in words? We can, because she's a drama person and I'm a poet. Can I bring that type of intensity and that type of truthfulness, honesty into that word to make it become that? And I think that is your takeaway from haiku. I mean, there are so many books and books have been written about haiku. But since you have just bombarded me with this question, what can you take away? This is the two things I can think of. So nature, respect for nature, and becoming becoming one with that, what you write.
Yes, and I feel there's another takeaway. In fact, two takeaways that I have realized after reading haiku.
Yeah.
I yet have to write haiku. I have to do that workshop
Yes.
with you before I
Yes.
get on to writing it.
Yes.
But the two things that I feel I have learned is are the first one is aesthetics. Um, because haiku teaches you aesthetics. I think any kind of poetry, especially lyrical poetry, uh, teaches you aesthetics and aesthetics of everything, the way you keep your home, the way you keep your desk, the way you wear what you're wearing, the colors that you choose. And I
Absolutely.
think that is a big impact of poetry in my life. The second is minimalism. So
Yes.
I think that has really, really helped. Because this is an art of, like, you have to edit, right, when you're writing
Yes. Yes.
haiku, and you just choose exactly what is needed, not anything more.
Every word, if it is
Every word.
9 word poem, 9 words, I'm going to the market to buy potatoes is 9 words. That doesn't make a poem. So if you're going to have a poem which is going to even live for 10 days, Bashos has lived for 400 years. So if it's going to have a poem that's going to live for some years, it has to have a meaning. Every word has to have a place and a meaning for it. And now that Vaishali is talking about it, in Japanese poetry, we call the aesthetic tool, that nuance that I start off the class with is ma, small m and small a, ma. And you'll remember that because we call our mothers ma. Okay, Indians shouldn't have any problems. Ma is the uncluttered feeling. It is the intervals between words. It's the interval between, supposing I'm saying I'm going to keep on talking, and then what do you do? Supposing I keep on talking, and what you take is just 2 points. Then you have listened to everything I have said. And you might not. So that ma, that space, the intervals, the gaps that we leave between words, the gap, the pauses we give when we decorate a house, the pauses and the thing when we give, when we even show our affection to our child, instead of just smothering the child with love, you hold back and then you give, and then give a space between for the child to grow also. And I think ma is a beautiful concept, and it is so, I mean, they say a beautiful explanation is ma, for I don't know where we are with time, Vaishali, because this is never ending, talking about haiku. Okay, but ma, they say, is part and parcel of Japanese culture. It can become your culture too. It can become your way of thinking. See, ma is, and you pronounce as M-A-A-H, ma.
Okay.
Okay? Okay? And ma is when you enter a room, you see the room full of artifacts and beautiful rugs, and all the paintings are gorgeous, and you say, wow, wow, wow. And then you step out, and after 2 months, or even after 2 hours, and even 4 hours, you don't remember even one thing that you saw. It's just that the room was cluttered with beautiful things. He says, Ma is, that is not Ma. Ma is when you just have an empty room, maybe just a stand over there, maybe a vase with just one flower, maybe it's drooping. He says, till your death, you will remember that scene. That is Ma, the uncluttered. He says if you can get that uncluttered feel in your mind, that is what meditation is. And we try Ma in our poems. In 9 words, if a poem can live for 400 years and using so much of space, we call it dreaming spaces, breathing spaces, white spaces. We call it all names, but you have to know how to give those spaces in the poem. So the in the book, the poem is just little. That's all. There's nothing more in that page. And it says so much. If you have to paraphrase it, you'll be writing 3/4 of the page to write, explain that poem. The poem says it in 9 words. And that is the beauty, the concise, the brevity, the briefness, and still holding so much of truth and honesty. And then respect to Mother Earth, and then the spaces, and then the uncluttered feeling, then the semicircle of a haiku, leaving and allowing the reader to enter. I mean, loads and loads, books and books and books have been written, and the funniest thing, there is no definition of haiku. Will you believe it? We've all been trying to define haiku, and nobody has been able to define haiku. It's just beyond us. It's beyond us.
I think it's a good thing in a way. I think some things need not be defined. Then
Exactly.
because every definition will have a full stop, and I don't think haiku has full stops.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Very good point, Vaishali. Beautiful. Beautifully explained. Yes.
All right. So I'll take this opportunity to ask all our viewers to maybe respond to this whole talk that we have been having with just one word. How is it making you feel?
Now I must put on my glasses to read it.
Let's practice Ma right now. One word from each one of you who's watching us, and please don't leave. Stay there and write that one word that you feel by just listening to our conversation. So looking forward to your words. And as we look forward to your words, Kala, I would request you to read maybe your favorite haiku first and read some of Bashu's haiku, if you could.
See, Bashu's I can. In the twilight of dawn, a white fish with an inch of whiteness. People will say this is not a poem at all, but it has lived for 400 years. In the twilight of dawn, a white fish. He has used something called the zooming technique. In the twilight of dawn, I'm seeing the whole sky, a white fish. I turn to Chennai. I'm in the beach, Marina Beach, a white fish with an inch of whiteness. He has brought it. And what can that inch be? Semicircle of a haiku. He has not completed it. It can be the fin if you want. It can be the tip of the nose if you want. It can be the body. It can be anything. Another one, of course, a famous of Basho's is an old pond. A frog jumps in, the sound of water. 2 senses. We can hear and we can see. In 9 words, old pond, a frog jumps in, sound of water.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah. Let's see. Mingle. I'm feeling.
So
Ma.
Hima
Yes.
is
Love this
Hima
idea
is
of
saying
Ma.
mingle.
Yes. I'm thoroughly enjoying the session.
Thank you. I think Providence, Vidya is saying Providence. That is what she is taking away from this. If we could highlight Vidya, Hima, and Jayashree's comments, yes, for everybody to see.
Yes, I'm feeling Ma.
Yes, and Hima says mingle.
Mingle, yes. Understand, respect when we do that. Providence.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for responding. I would really appreciate if more words come in. But yes, Kala, we could listen to more of Basho's haiku. You.
Rainforest, this is my poem. Rainforest, the lives Rainforest, the second line is the lives. Rainforest, the lives I step on. See, the whole thing changes.
Hmm.
Rainforest, the lives. Yes, in rainforest, it's thriving. The insects, the flora, the fauna, everything is thriving. The
Yeah.
lives I step on. The third line is I step on. I step on those. I don't know. I'm wearing my shoes. I hardly care where I'm walking. I don't know how many ants and how many insects I've crushed when I walk.
Hmm.
Rainforest, the lives I step on. Then one of my favorites is when we went to Shimla, and
Hmm.
my daughter was 9 years and my son was 11 years old, and then we were going down. So they got into the train, because a toy train. I don't know how many of you know, it's a toy train going down, and they wanted to see going down, and so they went and took the corner seat, and they were very happy. It was an empty bogie, and they went and took the corner seat, and they said, "We are going to sit in the window seat and we're going to look down." Just before the train started, the Javans came in and they said, "Sorry, this compartment is ours. Please, this bogie is ours. Please go to the next." And all four of us, my husband, my two children, and myself, all four of us trooped out. And then we went to the next compartment. Everything was full, packed. So we waited for the next train, which means this train has to go down and then it has to come up, and then we take the train. So there we were, and I saw the 11-year-old child's disappointment and the 9-year-old child's disappointment. This happened nearly 20 years back. And in haiku, we call something called the memory coup. Hai is something that comes from haikai no renga, which is comical verses, and ku means verse. So haiku. And so now we, as a joke, we say memory coup. What our memories have etched. And that, we were not haiku poets then, but now I'm a haiku poet. And what I wrote was dense fog. It was 6 o'clock in the morning when we went to take the first train back home, back to the downhill.
Hmm.
Dense fog. The train evaporates. Yes, the train will evaporate. I'm telling the truth. I'm not making up. No fiction here. The train evaporates into a distant horn. Dense fog, the train evaporates into a distant horn. If you see that,
And I can hear it also.
yes, because generally trains, when they start picking up speed, the driver will honk because we are used to crossing the railway lines. He's going to say, "The train is picking up speed, please. I'm going to zoom now." Okay. Dense fog, the train evaporates into a distant horn. How can the train become a horn? But it has vanished from my sight. It
Hmm.
has vanished. And that was the moment that I realized that time, because I saw the disappointment and saw the train vanishing, and then the train disappeared. And after 1 minute or so, pong, the horn. Okay. So it's such an intimate thing. It's very intimate to me because it held so many of my emotions. But even if 50% can reach you, and you say, "Yes, I can hear it, I can visualize this," and look at the ma in it. Dense fog, the train evaporates into a distant horn. Can you see the ma there? The
Hmm.
difference between the train evaporating, you see the train, it's evaporating, and then the horn. Far
Hmm.
away on the ma, the distance. And then the semicircle of a haiku. I've left it, I've just left it there for you to imagine. So these are all the things that we can keep on, I think. Yes,
Yes, I think, oh God, it is
it's, a,
6:54.
it's
I'm
an
so sorry.
ocean. It's an ocean. Is there any
Uh,
doubt? Is there anything that you people want to ask, please?
yeah, if there's anything
Any
that you would
doubt?
like to ask Kala, please write your
Darling,
questions down.
please leave a
We
mark in my empty mind. Very nice, Jayashri. Very nice. Very nice.
so Hima has a question.
Form of poetry to be introduced to the younger students.
Hmm.
Hima, I think any poetry will be good. any poetry is good if you're not going to analyze the poet and the poem again and again and again. Leave it there, and after the analysis, get the child to write whatever they want. I think that should go hand in hand, that any poetry is good. And we don't do that. We do the analysis, and then we say we are giving homework on that poem, then study that poem, and then the exam, the question would be on the poem. Say
Yeah.
based on William Wordsworth's Daffodils, write a poem.
Daffodils.
Write a poem. That should be
Oh, we
your
have.
question for the exam.
I think, Kala, when we were growing up, especially when I was growing up, me and my friends, we used to copy these poems. We used to take inspiration from this and write our own poems. And
Yes, I think we should do that. We should do
yeah,
that.
it was a great idea. I think all of us would sit and we would copy a poem and then
Yes,
maybe change the words and feel
yes,
very nice about it. That okay, so we
yes.
have written.
In haiku we call it, I was inspired by Basho. We said we were inspired. We don't say we copied him. We say we are inspired by him. How can kids
Okay,
participate in a poetry uh,
class.
class?
Yeah.
How can they participate? See, participate, I don't know. I have time. But like I told you, when I went to that class and I saw the students of 10-year-old, 11-year-old, I was miserable in class A, fifth A. I had 10 minutes break. And then I said, fifth B, I'm going to do it differently. Because that was my first class with a child where I didn't know the language very well and the age mattered. So what I did was I took a very simple poem, Mountain Bridge. I passed through the clouds. So mountain bridge, you're climbing on the mountain, you're passing, but ultimately the clouds are coming and you're passing through the clouds. So mountain bridge, Ma, a lot of space. I passed through the clouds. See, when that happens, I showed them the poem and I said, can you draw it? When they drew it, I clapped for one. I made the other child who had drawn very well to come and stand in front of the class and talk about it. And then the other child to say why he didn't draw that figure. He said, no, that my figure was all covered with the clouds. So there's no man there. There's no person there on the bridge. So these are all the interpretations. And that is how you can get a child involved in a poem. And that is very important. And I think it can be very easily done. I think poetry class should be an interactive class. It cannot be the teacher talking and the child listening. It has to be interactive. It has to be interactive, and it can be done. And that is
It
how I
can be done.
conduct all my workshops, even for senior citizens, for adults, for undergrads, for children. It's an interactive. I call my haiku workshops interactive workshops. I put out a poem and ask everyone to give their feelings about it. And then the end of the day, after doing some around 10 or 12 poems, the end of the day, the homework is that they write and they send it by email to me by 9 o'clock so that I sit up till 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock and correct, or rather read their poems and give comments. And then the next day, we discuss it. And that is the procedure. That is the way you read, you write, you read, you write. It's the way the music is. You hear, you sing. You don't keep on hearing. You have to practice sometimes. No, the sadhana is required. So that is the
Oh,
procedure for poetry
there we have
workshops.
got the $1,000,000 question. How can I join your workshop?
That Vaishali was asking. I'm slightly busy now, but what I conduct is a 5-hour workshop. Okay, so
Yeah.
it'll be split into 2 days, and then, like I told you, I give homework, and then we talk about it the next day. And most of my poems, my students, I'm not exaggerating. The participants have become well-known poets, and they've won awards, and they've got two have got their book published. So it is happening. So you can be all you need is 2 months of dedicated approach to what I've taught you, and then you step out of the rules, you step out of the box, you do what you want, but retain the haiku spirit, and you're published. You're published all over the world, and you'll be a haiku poet, and you can call yourself a haiku poet. Yes.
Yeah, so Hima, don't worry. We'll be announcing a workshop with Kala soon, and I'll be after Kala for doing this. So I'll do that work for you. A movie that all teachers and parents can watch to understand the the beauty and the relevance of poetry in a child's life is Dead Poets Society. I think that is the film which changed my complete outlook about
Wow,
poetry.
send it to me. I've not seen it. Vaishali, send it over to me, please. I would love to see it.
Yes,
Yes,
yes. So Dead Poets Society. So Robin Williams plays the teacher, and it's a beautiful, beautiful film. I recommend this film to every parent, every teacher, and every child. I think
lovely,
anybody who is above 8 or 9 can watch this film. It's beautiful.
lovely, lovely, lovely.
So great, Kala. So we have come to an end of our conversation.
Yes, yes, it looks like
And
that. 60 minutes have gone like
it just
this.
flew just like that. So thank you so much, Kala, for coming in
And
and
thanks,
sharing.
Vaishali. Thank you so much for calling me. And thank you for all your comments. It's been beautiful. Hema, you're saying it's beautiful. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
Hima
you.
is saying that it is indeed a lovely movie. So yes, so please log on to our website, joyofdrama.com, and sign up because whenever we do a workshop, we definitely share it with all our viewers, all our participants of these Method in Madness episodes. And I would also request everybody to please subscribe to our channel, like this video if you've enjoyed our program, if you've enjoyed our conversation, and do keep coming every weekend. We do this every weekend, and we bring in experts from all over the fields, Kala, to talk about life, children, and growing up. So thank you, Kala, once again, and thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Bye.
And thank you so much. And thanks, Vaishali. And thank you to all of you who came for this program. Thank you. And for all your beautiful comments. Thanks. Enjoyed it.